All right, good morning. Game week, it's officially here. Thank you guys for being here. Obviously, very, very excited to get this season kicked off. The guys have had a great camp, a lot of hard work and preparation, obviously, starting from January on to this moment. We've got to have a great week of preparation to continue to push forward against our opponent at 3:30 versus UT Chattanooga in Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. I expect our fans to show up and be loud and proud. We can't wait to see them. It's been way too long, and it'll start with that Tiger Walk and then all the way in through kickoff through the end of the game. But it's been an excellent offseason, a lot of things that we can't wait to showcase for our fans. But let's look ahead at our opponent, right? UT Chattanooga, they've had 7 straight winning seasons. So, this is obviously a program that's been established, that's had a lot of success and sustainability, and they've done it the right way for a long time. Go back to last season, they had 6 games where they scored 31 points or more. They also had 6 games where they held their opponents to 10 points or less. So a program that's certainly been effective. You look at what they've been able to do over the last few years. They played Georgia State really close. They played Western Kentucky really close. They played Kentucky at Kentucky very close a couple years ago. So we're going to get their best shot. Obviously, anytime the season kicks off, there's those things that so much is about the opponent, but we also have to make sure we're handling our own business, right? Make sure we tackle well, taking care of the football. I think anybody that watched week 0, and I say this every year, right, some of those proponents that go on with that first game is being able to control yourselves and handle yourselves and seeing what we're capable of. A lot of new faces and non-new places, but couldn't be more excited and thrilled to go out there in front of our fans and put on hopefully a winning performance.
Coach, you talked about now you're switching to game week. So what's the mentality? What's your mentality, and how do you get a bunch of new guys focused on that switch from camp to game week?
Yeah, I think camp is just so much. Okay, hey, we're getting through the installations, going through every situation, scenario possible, and you really just hone in on each practice had its own theme. Now you get into a kind of a routine, if there's such a one in college football, and say, okay, hey, here's what a Tuesday practice looks like. Here's what a Wednesday practice looks like. Thursday walkthrough, a fast Friday, and then game day. And so getting our guys back into a schedule. They also start classes today. As you guys know, we firmly believe in academics. It's very important to us. So getting them back into that routine. And I mentioned it yesterday in the team meeting, right? We have to have an immense focus this season. And it's got to be one day at a time. Putting the blinders on, as the media well knows, I'm off social media. So for me, it's that there's no further distractions other than handling what's right in front of us, and really 1 week at a time, one day at a time. And I think our guys understand that approach, and I'm really excited to see them put it in. Now, we've got to preach it, we got to live it, we got to do it one day at a time as well ourselves.
Ryan, obviously the depth chart is out. I noticed, a guy like C.J. Smith, who you guys talked about his speed, I noticed that he wasn't on there. Was that just a coaching decision, or is he battling?
He's been battling some injuries most of this training camp, so I do expect him to help us out at some point this season, but until a young man's fully healthy and others have been able to step up in place, currently he's not listed on the depth chart.
And then I do see that Marcelo Bussey, he must be fully healthy coming back from injury.
Yeah, thrilled for Marcelo. He's a young man that came in from junior college and was trying to figure out his role, and then obviously I think he's our leading receiver coming back with 10 catches from last season, but also off a torn ACL. And had a tremendous offseason, worked his tail off, and did everything the right way. Full credit, obviously, to the sports medicine staff. They did a great job with him as well. And, Bussey's worked his tail off and has earned that job, that right to start. And we got a lot of receivers that will play. There's guys that aren't even listed. I'm sure we'll get in the rotation in the mix. But, yeah, very pleased with Bussey and his growth and the way he's been able to heal and push.
Speaking of that, Coach, is there one position that was the toughest because of competition to come up with the 2 deep?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got I said this all along. You saw some of those linebackers had a bunch of ors.
Right.
We could be like some of those programs and put 100 guys on the depth chart, just or. But I do think, you look at it, I've told you guys all along, we know what Greg DeWosier and Sutton Smith are capable of. I think we've got some other running backs we feel really good about. But, yeah, I think when it's all said and done, Greg, that wide receiver room, right? Is there that one guy? Last year I think we went in and said we knew what Rock Taylor was capable of, Demir, right? Even Kobe Drake. And it was kind of like, okay, the rest of the guys, when those guys get tired, then you'll have the ability to go in. Whereas this year it's like, wait, there's no true established guy on our roster. So I think a lot of those guys are going to come in and get in the mix and kind of rotate. And so, it may be instead of a guy getting, 60 plays and his backup getting 20, does that look a little bit different for us this season? And, really once you really get into the game, get a feel for how they do, is it a 30-30-20? And then there's the random guy that gets 5 plays that, oh, we haven't even talked about him. It's good to see him step up.
Is there any part of the uncertainty or the mystery that's fun for you?
Yeah, I'm a little nuts that way. Absolutely. You guys always know, like, there's nothing but pure excitement for college football, right? The season to open, and obviously being the head coach here at Memphis, like, there's so much excitement. There's always angst. Like I tell you guys all the time, like, let's call it what it is. Like, I don't care who we're playing. There's nervousness, there's angst, there's all those things. But the biggest thing for me is that preparation. So I think there's challenges within that. Trying to get a feel for, okay, what are we capable of? And I told our staff this morning, there's so many unknowns. So we got to prepare better we can, but we also can't have paralysis by analysis, right? We can't say, ooh, we could do this. And that's sometimes with like more time, like, ooh, we got 10 days to prepare for UTC. What should we do? But yeah, I'm excited. Like, I knew for the most part what Rock Taylor was capable of going into his last season, right? I knew what Seth Hennigan was capable of. Man, I haven't seen Brennan Lewis without a red jersey on. And like, is he a better quarterback when it's not two-hand touch football and underwear, right? I think he might be. With some of these guys, like, man, it's great to see Sutton Smith back, but, the closest someone gets to him is from me to you, like, what's he going to do in open space with the ball in his hands on Saturday? So, yeah, there's a lot of that. I'm really excited. I think we're going to sit back. You always learn so much after 1 week, right? We're going to have the next press conference on Monday. You guys are going to say, hey, Ryan, what'd you learn? And there's going to be so much. And then the next week, we're going to continue to learn. But now more than ever, right, like, right after that game, I can't wait just to go back and watch the film and say, well, this is what this guy's capable of. Oh, he showed this, or maybe we had this guy in the wrong position at this point. So, yeah, there's a lot of excitement as well that goes along with that.
Can I follow up real quick and ask why you think Brendan might be a better player when it's real as opposed to 7-on-7 or red jersey or whatever?
Yeah, well, I mean, he runs really, really well. I'm not saying, like I told you guys in the past, not giving away any game plan secrets. We're not planning on running him 80 times a game, but sometimes if things aren't there, he has the ability to do what he is. He's capable. He's 225 pounds, 222 pounds, and can roll and do those things. So, kind of see what he has. And we always told Seth, and we want Brendan the same deal, take care of your body and protect yourself. But I think he's got some elusiveness to him as well. I don't want that on full display, on Saturday. Like, that means we're not doing our job. And again, like I said, doesn't mean we're going to be running triple option, football where he's handling the ball 50 times out of the game and pitching it last second.
Coach, there's been some chatter about, you put out on social media, calling all defensive backs. Is that because there's a depth issue, or you just didn't open up to the students to get them involved?
Well, I talked to the NCAA compliance, Jarvis, and I found out you had 1 more year of eligibility. And I was told, I know you got your degree from the University of Memphis, but I was told you're still working on your master's degree. And so I was told there's a chance I could get you to come back and get a couple more plays. That was the whole thing, just getting you back into the building. Yeah, well, I know we have not yet retired your jersey. We're working on that. But no, it's interesting because I had some people asking me out, like, oh my gosh, if you're doing tryouts this close to the game, that's not a good thing. So the reality of it is, and we've had this discussion before with the NCAA rules and what it looked like, the House settlement getting to 105. Okay, and with that being said, they also had what was called designated student athletes, DSAs. Okay, and so reality, if you look at some of these schools, like there's some schools out there with 140 guys on their roster. We are not there. We'll be about 120 this year, which includes about 15 designated student athletes. But where we're at, we're allowed 1 more roster spot. And so the reality of this, that I don't want to hinder anybody's chances that may be walking on because they could play. We saw what Calvin Austin was doing. I think when Calvin Austin walked in and sat in the back of the building, we all sat there and said, I don't know if this young man will ever play for us. And sure enough, we were wrong. And thank goodness. And so whoever comes and walks on, the point is to maybe be that 119th, 120th spot on our roster and the opportunity to join our football program. The odds of that person playing this year would be very, 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 very slim. So it's more to fill a roster spot need. It might as well, right? As the season gets on, you get, knock on wood, guys that get injured. Sometimes you need some scout team bodies, guys that can give a good look, and that's nothing more than that. Yeah, look, I think Christian Ross, obviously he's been a part of our program, limited production, but he's one of those guys that every year you got to see grow a little bit more. And we knew what we had in the tight room last year, but Christian has really, really come on. He's put on the weight the right way, and he's been the most consistent guy in there. Also have a lot of faith in Bryce Anderson and what he's been able to do. So I kind of look at those two. Like, if you went out there in a game and said, okay, hey, you're allowed 80 plays and Christian got 40 and Bryce got 40, I don't think we'd skip a beat. I think we saw Bryce had a really good spring, has come on. You guys got to see him in the spring game do a lot of things. But very, very pleased with both of their growths. So I feel like we got two starting tight ends, and we have other guys in that room that maybe will fill a need as well.
Ryan, how do you feel about your safety position just in terms of who you put at those positions?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty darn good. Obviously, the loss of Cortland Marsh hurts. I'm not going to lose sight of that. We knew what Cortland would have been, kind of a field general and a coach back there. But, it starts, we talk about that Tiger position. Kamari Wilson's a guy that's really come on. He's actually become a vocal leader, and we have really high expectations for him as well back there. Hasheem Young, a name that another man who seems they came off an injury last year that I think's got a good chance to really help us, and he's an older guy with a lot of years under his belt, but experience back there. And then you kind of look at Chris Bracey, right, the transfer from UAB, can do a lot of things. So really feel good about the safeties. Plus, I feel like we got other guys back there that can continue to help, and we may have some of that rotation. Not to harp on Cortland, obviously that was a big loss, but like I told you guys, hey, we're not going to woe is me. We're going to put a smile on our face and say next man up, and I feel like we've got still plenty of depth in the safety position.
Now, you got a couple of oars, but for the most part, your starters pretty much no oars. Is that beneficial as opposed to going into a season where you do have a couple of oars at those starters positions?
Yeah, I think part of it is, one, when you have oars, you don't know what you have, or you got a lot of depth and you're really comfortable with them, and that's kind of what you want. Like going back to the tight end room, like we got guys that I think either one could start. Hey, your shoelace is tied a little bit differently. Why don't you go instead, right, where you're not missing a beat? So yes, there is comfort, but I do think having some of that depth there with those oars is you feel good. I think sometimes you saw some freshmen there at the depth chart. Like, hey, is this a young man like Ian Williams? Like, can he come on as a season and continues to learn, right? Like his growth potential from 1 month of in-season college football is going to be exponential. So, like, what's he going to look like in a month from now? Is he one of those guys that finds himself into the mix, kind of like a Brady Cluse did last year? So, just, I'm always been very transparent with you guys, so I think that helps. Like, oh, yeah, Ryan did mention this guy early on, and he's a guy that could get some reps later on.
Coach, do any of the rule changes stand out to you? In particular, the faking the injury deal, they kind of immediately did something about that. What are your thoughts on those changes?
Yeah, there are always rule changes to college football, and I do think that's obviously one that made a national level. I don't know, no one's ever accused us of, hey, faking injuries. It's nothing we talk about as a head coach. I certainly don't condone it and say, hey, this is what we do. If a team, we have never done it. Guys do get injured. I'll also tell you why we certainly won't allow it here is because if anybody on the sideline is caught doing this, guess who gets the fine? So if you're caught doing this on our sideline, Greg, this guy's getting the fine. So make sure when you're doing I don't want to see you doing it, telling a guy to go down because they're going to fine me regardless. Hey, who was that guy? I don't know. Coach Gaston, but so that's part of it. Yeah, and then just some of the other rules, I think it's interesting, the language on some of the replay. But, our officials, I truly believe our conference does a great job with the officiating and communicating that stuff. We've had them in-house. Brian Platt, the head of officiating, he visited all conference schools and kind of went through them. I feel pretty comfortable with them, the clarity of it. And then even on a national level, I don't think there's anything that, we're going to see that kind of shows up. We're going to continue to talk to our guys. We show them all the things that occurred in week 0, like, right, no TikTok dancing, right? The Stanford D lineman that got the penalty for the TikTok dancing. Obviously, the brandishing the weapon was a huge deal last year. The snap infractions by defense yelling out the cadence. So those are things we're going to continue to harp on because there'll be points of emphasis this season as well.
Ryan, I'm not sure you've been asked about this, but obviously this is going to be your first season as a dad. You've got not one, but 2 little
Yeah.
kids at home. Throughout camp, have you gotten a sense of how that might affect things and the way you do things this year?
Yeah, look, first off, it's an absolute blessing. I'm fortunate my wonderful wife handles it all. Some people would say, it's like, is it a distraction? No, it's actually a wonderful thing because my focus even more has just been on the things that matter to me, right? This program and my family. And, I'm very fortunate. Like sometimes, like they just, right before running out here to the press conference, they had come up to see me. I was in a meeting And I ran, if I was going to be late to this press conference, I was going to kiss those two little girls, good morning, and then come here. If I was going to be late, so be it, because they're everything to me. And so I think one of those things is find that right balance. You guys all know, like, don't worry, my concentration, my focus is 100% on this football program. The 100-hour work weeks here and pouring in over film, that will not change, right? And instead of maybe on my Thursday night, get a chance to catch my breath and, normally saying, hey, I'm going to turn on a college football game, you know what? Maybe I'll be playing with my girls, and I'm okay with that. And in post-game, instead of spending, 35 minutes of the post-game press conference, maybe it's 32, and I get to go tuck those little girls in at night, and it's an absolute blessing. And I think I'll be a better coach because of that. I think I understand it puts a lot of things into perspective. If you have 6-month-old identical twin girls, it teaches you a lot about patience. Maybe there's a little bit less sleep and some wrinkles under my eyes, but man, it's been a blessing. My wife's done a tremendous job of being the head coach at home and just kind of allowing me to really focus on the task at hand every single day. And I'm a father figure to 120 young men every day. I get plenty of testosterone. Maybe sometimes coming home to the estrogen palace is a good thing for me. Even my female dog, it looks at me funny. So it's been a great thing. I think it's going to be great for me, for our program, and the ability to continue to do things at a high level.
Ryan, apologies for asking this before, but with Sutton, the conversations have come out saying you barely played last year in terms of like mentally preparing. What has that been like, trying to get him? Obviously, physically, we know he's good to go, but mentally, ready to go.
I think that's part of it. Anybody that comes from a season-ending injury, right? First quarter, first game was our starting running back, as we know, going to last season. And, part of that rehabilitation, it's long, it's grueling, it's hard. And so much of that's not just the physical pain, the ability to push, the early mornings, the late hours, trying to get yourself physically ready, but the mental aspect, right? Think about this guy. He sat there and had to watch his team from afar, right? Not be able to travel, not be able to sit in meetings, and then be able to, especially at that position, can I trust that my knee's going to go out there the first time I catch a kickoff return, right? The first time I'm handed off the football. And so a lot of that is building his trust and confidence back in himself. We've got full expectations that he's close to 100% and really, really excited about what he's going to bring to the table this year. You guys know how I feel about him as a young man, but obviously a tremendous football player. So he's done a phenomenal job of keeping his mind right, as we like to say around here, and pushing through. Obviously, he's got great faith in it, but we'll never know, right, until that first carry gets up here. And I told him, hey, even if that first carry is for 1 yard or 100 yards, man, put a smile on your face because you did it. You're going to pop back up and get ready to get that ball again.
And then
Last question.
with the walk-ons, I'm going to ask that, but with roster limits, how does that work with walk-ons now, especially if you wanted to try somewhere or something like that? Are you able to kind of handle
Yeah, so the House settlement said you're at 105, okay, and then what we call is, which I mentioned earlier, DSA, designated student athletes, okay, and so kind of as an institution, we looked at it, and I think we're somewhere around the 120 to 122 mark on where we're comfortable with our roster limits, okay. I think there's some schools out there with 140 something that really took advantage of this and said they were going to cut, 45 guys and then added a bunch of guys to their roster. Whereas we are just looking for another person that we think they possibly fill in as a practice squad type player for us for this year. I'm not saying they can never play. I went back and alluded to the Calvin Austin deal. He never doubt a walk-on, but that's kind of where we're at, just trying to fill that void. This should be the end of it. I think once school starts, it's a perfect time. But that's one of the reasons why we waited this long to have that roster spot, because we wanted an enrolled student that's already enrolled in classes. That's part of it, right? If not, we would have done it a few weeks ago. But it's more of a comfort, just so as the season goes on, hopefully injuries don't occur, but we have the opportunity to continue to move forward in the right direction without missing a beat at practice. Got one more? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was going to ask you about the freshman standout quarterback, Antoine. How do you feel about his progression?
Yeah, AJ's done a phenomenal job. Like I said all along, right, when I named Brennan Lewis the starting quarterback, I felt like we had three quarterbacks that could play and start in this conference. AJ Hill being one of them, obviously Arrington Maiden being the other. AJ's done a tremendous job. I think the biggest thing you see about that kid is he came here as a 17-year-old, and that maturation process that he's gotten every single day. He's smart, he's tough, he cares about it. He loves ball, he watches film. I think both those guys that are behind Bree Lou have bright futures, and couldn't be more excited. I think AJ is going to continue to learn. Whenever either one of their numbers is called, they'll be ready to go this season.
Coach, ideally, real quick, if you could if I could piggyback off that, would you like to have ideally a package or two for the other guys to come in early in the season in these first couple of games, just so they can get their feet wet, you can see what they look like under live competition?
I think if I did, it'd just be to throw the opponent off and make the future opponents have to study more film on other quarterbacks. I think sometimes, unless Brennan Lewis is not in a rhythm, I've found that gets us out of pace. You know, we did that one time last year. We had a package for Arrington. He went in there and had a 3-yard loss on a run. And I sat there and said, you know, you got a pretty darn good quarterback in Seth. Like, why are we taking him off the field? And you know, we've done that before in the past. We did Wildcat packages with Darrell Henderson and Tony Pollard. That's not to say we won't, because I certainly we have to leave that open. And kind of see how the game flow. I think a lot of that's a feel for it. Hey, do we need a change of pace, or is it to get their feet wet? But you know, you hope you named your starter for the rest of the season, because that means he's healthy and you've been pleased with the progress he made week in and week out.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
So much.